good at home, in the office, I can say it's not so good. I think we're gonna change, we're gonna.
Everybody has a problem with.
Fracture right now, and telephone, and well, we got Spectrum in the village, so I think we're gonna go with Spectrum and do the whole package. Like I told the guy, when I talked to him, I don't care. I want to know what it's gonna cost me in the end. Yeah. Yeah, right now, we probably had them out there, I think 4 times since September.
Oh, lovely. Got it. Yeah. These are nice. All right. Okay, ready to start public safety. Sheriff Rubin. Good afternoon.
Operational updates, we still have a few on the sheriff's side of the house. We still have people out. Also had a deputy heard on 28 last night, going around, somebody got a cracker about it,
Okay. Number 1, occupational or operational updates.
Yeah,
Just did, I'm sorry. Number 2, FYI, contracts.
Power DMS is our policy software company, and getting the law enforcement policies from DCGS integrated into that. That's what this is for. This is kind of the first step towards applying for accreditation.
Okay, number 3, recreation. Irrigation.
Yep, this is for a new boat motor using 10,000 ARPA funds and 10,000 state aid reimbursement.
Number 4, I'm sorry. Motion.
So moved.
Thank you, Mr. Becker. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, carried.
The next 4 or 5 have to do with cars, and I'll let Dave talk on that.
Number 4. Said disposal. 5 police cars were taken out of service this year, which will be replaced by the 2021 Chargers.
Any questions? Need a motion for number 4 and 5. Mr. Granger makes the motion. Thank you. All in favor?
Are we gonna add 6 to that because they all are related?
Excuse me?
Are we gonna add the 6 to that because they are all related?
Oh, would you like to add 6 to that too?
Chairman,
Okay, 4, 5, and 6. All in favor? Aye. Opposed, carried.
You still doing that? I am. Yeah, contact. Yeah, we got one of them's ready to go, another one's ready in a couple days. I'll let you know when I'm ready to go. Okay, I'm gonna move on 5 hour now. Perfect.
Okay, number 7.
Just so you know, just so everyone's aware, the ARPA funds that you guys approved in that meeting was about 132,000, and once these numbers all came in, they came in more. So I just want to point that out and make sure you guys are okay with that. I mean, I'm sure you covered it already, it's what it is, but.
Do we need to redo them?
No, I just wanted you to be aware because the resolution will trump that meeting, but I just wanted to let you know that it is a little bit more than what was anticipated.
Some of it's a little more changeover money. Obviously, we didn't get the cars till December, so we didn't get them changed over last year. We're gonna spend some 2022 budgeted money to change over the chargers. So when we order more cars, the appropriations, there was more changeover funds. There's gonna be probably 20,000 from 21 that we didn't touch. You know, that's the general fund.
Everybody good with that? Okay. Move on to number 7.
Number 7 is this, we put out the, went out the bid for vehicles for the 4 interceptor utility. 5 white ones, which will become marked vehicles, is number 7. And that was won by Van Mortal Ford out of Rochester. And number 8 was for 3, the same thing, which would be unmarked, also won by Van Mortal Ford.
Any questions on that?
Or any delivery date thing on that day, or the
Delivery date, is a problem with everything, we changed the bulk order. So we had to reappropriate to it again, they told me the date on that was gonna be 54 weeks. And they found it from a different source to get it to us hopefully by summer, so we can put it on the boat, that's why it was a little more money. Delivery date on the cars, they're telling me is 30 to 34 weeks. The day we give them the PO. So it puts us in September, so hopefully we'll have them all switched over by the end of the year, so we don't have to go through keep everything on one cycle.
like everything?
Okay. Any more questions on that? We got motion. Mr. Burke makes the motion. All in favor? Opposed, carried. Number 9.
I put a thunder watch in my budget letter this year, and this is a sex offender clearinghouse website, 9 and 10 are related, and so we're looking to get the contract for that. We had it years ago, and then we ran into kind of a budget crisis and got rid of it. Now we're looking to get it back. What's unique about Wyoming County, not just Wyoming County, but you're looking up sex offenders, if you're just using the state website, which is not that easy to use. But also if you put in, for example, 14011, you're gonna get hundreds of sex offenders because they haven't been Wyoming correctional or automatically. So we need something a little bit different aside from the state website. What's nice about the Offender Watch as well is like many other counties in the state use this. I think it was last year, Supervisor Davis came back and asked me, from NICEAG, and asked me how come we don't have Offender Watch. So I kind of put that back on the radar. What's nice about it is if somebody moves from here to Niagara County, we're all in the same system, and they can just pick the person up automatically. We're also going to use this for the police departments as well. If they live in the village, if sex offender lives in the village, then that jurisdiction has advisory control over that sex offender. So we'll be able to use it both in county and out of county. It's going to be a huge upgrade compared to what we're doing now.
Does it specify in the system if they're definitely in Wyoming County, like Pavilion, if it's a Covington person? Would pick that up,
Yes,
or Darien Center?
right. If somebody's got an Alden zip code, and they live on
Right,
on Thurston Road. Yeah.
okay.
A few years ago, we used to get, for things from sheriff's department, a notification of which sex offender picture the guy put on the bulletin. We haven't got it. We aren't having any in Perry or.
Yeah, definitely, he definitely has some. He definitely has quite a few in the village. Which I don't think Mike takes care of that. The problem I was running into that was then they move out and then the notifications go on back saying they're no longer there.
Yeah.
So I still do it on level 3s, level 2s, depending upon, to be honest with my own personal thoughts on what the risk is on that. I would let you know. But on the level 3s, I let the supervisors know. This would be something that you could subscribe to and be automatically notified if somebody. It's pretty user friendly, not just for us as a law enforcement agency, but the public as well.
Need a motion on number 9 and 10? Thank you. Supervisor Becker makes the motion, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, carried. Let's do, we have to go back to, page 1 in the rotunda. Rotunda Security Station expectations.
My thought on this is a tough one. Was I was going to meet with set up a meeting with those offices that are affected and see what are you looking for when it comes to security, and see if we can come up with some sort of post assignment. As it stands today, you know, what I keep on saying, you make a lot, you can't carry a gun, you make it right, you can. That's just the fact. So what are we screening for? You know, are we looking to credential people when they come in? Are we looking to have a signage sheet? I know at one time we thought about a signage sheet, but that was when COVID was, you know, we were still doing the contact tracing and that type of thing. You know, what are we looking to accomplish by it? That way I can write up a post assignment.
Where's the location of the magnetometer going to be?
It's going to be in the rotunda.
Is it going to be what I was envisioning, what Mike was drawing out? It seemed to be walked in and along this side would kind of be the officer would be behind there. Would the magnetometer be there for everybody to go through, or would it be more centered towards the court side? Which again would end up with turn left, you're gonna go through the magnetometer, turn right here, you're good to go. Again, it depends on that placement of the magnetometer. If it's in that aisleway,
Right, just so we're clear on the magnetometer, if you're good, we're going to be sending everybody through the magnetometer. That means we're taking off shoes, we're taking off belts, all those types of things, because you can't set it.
again, that's what I'm saying is, as it seemed to be drawn up, we have along this side of it here towards where you and I currently are, that it would be kind of a walkway. If the magnetometer is there, everybody has to go through it. If it's over closer to the door to the courthouse, well, then obviously only the people going into the court are going through it. And again, it's simply based on that placement, and I would assume it's for the court, not for this building.
That's what we need to discuss.
I would say it's for the court, not, the magnetometer is for the court, not for this side of the building.
Then there's the question of what are we screening for? Are we just saying, you know, good morning, you know, we here to see, you know, if you go into the clerk's office, you go upstairs, go to the end of the hall, are we having people sign in, right? You know, that's what it's not my building, it's not my office, so that's the part that we're struggling with, and I need to write out a post assignment, how we're going to do this, that way everybody's treated, you know, fairly.
I mean, I remember going to a meeting in DSS office, and it was on library. And I almost think it was even before 9/11. And I mean, they had a deputy there, and you had to show ID. You know, if you had a county ID, whether it was even, you know, their county or something else, and if you didn't have that, you showed your driver's license. I don't remember if they wrote it down or took a photocopy of it or whatever, they had a copy machine kind of like they did at the vaccine clinic or what, but I don't know if it matters having knowing who actually is there, if there's something after the fact, because that's pretty much it. I mean, I don't think you guys are going to be calling over and having somebody run it through the system and say, this is a strange name, do you know this person or that person?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's been probably in the last 4 or 5 years, there's probably been, one handful of individuals that have really caused concern. And how are we gonna handle them when they actually do come to the building? Are they forbidden, are we escorting, those types of things as well, so. It's a tough one, and I can tell you on a grand jury day or a new jury day, we'll be holding up people significantly as they're going through the magnetometer, they're going to the courthouse side of it, so. Something to think about. I'll spearhead a meeting with, the departments that are in this building here and see if we can, what the thoughts are and see what we can come up with for post assignment. What the expectation is.
I mean, it'd be kind of nice if there's at least, I don't know. You guys are professionals, and then you've got pretty experienced people working at it. If there's some interaction, you can just, good morning, and it's like, where do you need to go or whatever. Trying to get a little lead is like, somebody says, well, I want to go up to the board of supervisors and tell them I'm mad about my taxes or whatever like that. It's kind of like, you kind of de-escalate things a little right there. Send them off, or you just let them go through.
And the biggest, make no mistake about it, the biggest advantage is now you're going to have some sight and a lot of sound where the deputies are now, you have neither.
Yeah.
So if somebody's calling for help or something, if you hear voices escalate in the hallway or out here, you should hear it. I think that goes pretty loudly throughout this building here. So, that's an advantage there, and I don't want to minimize that, but as far as we're screening, DSS is in a different category because there is state law that says you can't carry a DSS code. So mental health building, DSS, jail.
I think everybody's just looking for something reasonable, something maybe a little reasonably more than what we have. I like the idea that our swipe cards that slows people down a little bit, I don't think anybody's looking for anything over the top, but I think when you get everybody together, we're gonna be maybe leaning on you and whoever you bring to the meeting with you to offer some suggestions, because we don't want to be unreasonable, but I think just allowing people to come in the building and go wherever they want to is not a fabulous situation.
Or even just, it's nice to have it all in place. If there is something that comes up, maybe something that's happened in the community, or maybe it's something that's been happening nationwide that, people are disgruntled when they're coming in and there's violence or whatever. Yeah, you don't have to say, oh, how quick can we put all this stuff in place? Well, no, we'll have it at least physically in place. But like you said, we need a policy.
When we started this process, we added that one of the plans was to view cameras for both buildings would be viewed at the security station where the government center cameras aren't viewed at all right now. Panic buttons would be dispatched to dispatch, but then called down to that security station if there were issues with things. So I think there are the simple things that Cheryl's talking about, and then just as simple as signing in and just so we know who's in the building, whether they sign their actual name or not. But that went back to a contact tracing type thing as well with COVID stuff 2 years ago. But I think a lot of it is de-escalation maybe was the idea of somebody that does come in that may be a little heated. The first person or people you see are deputies, and may calm you down, and may fire you up, but at least it's visible that security presence is in both of the buildings right there to Rotunda. But really it's somebody viewing cameras and panic buttons, which isn't really something that's done now.
I really like the idea of making them sign in and out. To me, it's more of accountability of who's in the building. If something is to happen, you probably don't know 100% because you're going to have people that didn't sign out when they were supposed to, but you're going to have a good idea. and you're gonna have that accountability, who's in the building at the time. So it's gonna make the deputies or whoever's responding to have to clear a building, and for sakes, if we ever had to do that, we would know, we'd have a good idea who was in here. And you might have on that sign in where you're going. So we know where we should be looking for.
Yeah, and I don't know if it infringes on rights of people. I mean, I watch all kinds of videos and stuff like that, you know, you can't tell somebody to stay out of an area unless it's private office.
No, but you would have an idea of what area they're supposed to be in.
Or what office area they would be, or what they're at least going to do.
Your deputies have the ability to line people out road too.
We have a line, and we use that. If somebody is taking out their belt, their shoes, and they're still hitting on the metal detector, we'll use the line.
And nothing would change in talking to probation, nothing would change on their end. They still have their own magnetometer, they have their own in-house security, really every officer down there carries. But nothing changes really with that process of moving people on this side. We knew that the carrying would be, carrying a firearm would be in question, but I think it's just the presence, and then again, viewing cameras and being able to hear to respond in an emergency situation.
The only problem that I foresee is, like Greg said, grand jury day is crazy. There's quite a few people coming through. Maybe getting a list that day from, is it Shelley coming in now?
Yeah, they always have.
And then you just check mark the list of whoever comes in, that way they don't have to go through the whole sign-in process and everything.
Yeah, the process going to the courthouse is pretty smooth. We have that down. We have a pretty good idea, other than people that are filing emergency petitions or something like that, we have a pretty good idea who's coming in. We have a list of attorneys, they have a list of defendants, we have, defendant's mom comes in or something like that, we wouldn't know that, but for the most part, we got that. It's just making the right, is what we need to,
Just make it easy.
what we need to figure out, so. So, all right, I'll put something together, get with the department heads and officers, and I'll put something back for you.
I think I'm gonna need a taser.
Taser, they're gonna give you a taser.
In trouble. We're in trouble.
Unfortunately, that'll be for us department heads.
I think she'd use it right there.
Yeah.
As long as those reach, right?
Yeah.
Okay, any more questions or comments on that? Okay, guess we'll move on to number 11, position of federal correctional officer.
Jessica Hay was a part-time correction officer, and she resigned.
Someone like to make the motion or need a motion?
Yes.
Someone like to make the motion? Mr. Becker, please. Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
First carried. Number 12, operational updates with jail.
Our numbers we've been staying pretty steady between 50 and 60 for the last few months. We might take up a little bit in the next few weeks, but I don't think it'll be much more than that. Genesee County has still been very good to us, but I did talk to the sheriff last week, and they're breaking ground in Genesee County in March.
Construction going on in March of James. Okay. Number 13, under 911. Grant application.
This is an application, not application. This is just something Homeland Security does. This is our SIG grant that we get every year, and they didn't do it last year. So this would be a combined 2020/2021 award. And we put in there $1.5 million, only things that be closer probably to 1 million.
And so we can do 13 and 14 together.
Yeah, and 14 is the PSAP money, which is primarily used for dispatcher salaries. And then it'll be just for, we did get money for that last year, so this will just be a 2021 award. Hopefully 150,000, but I don't think it was that much last year. Said 120.
Someone like to, Mr. Granger makes the motion, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, carried. And next up, the other item is, I'm sure.
Yeah, but you know what, I put that on there because we do it every year, but I didn't put it in the date, it's just a point date and put it. Be what it is, like service the well and it's done, it's.
Do you want it to be on there?
Sure.
Things are all work, so. Okay, can I get a motion for number 15?
Mr. Burke makes the motion, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, carried.
No, we'll be down next year.
Okay, I think that's it.
All right, thank you.
Anything else? Thank you. Thank you,
Take care.
guys. Thank you, Mr. Brian.
Thank you.
Number one, the County Board of Supervisors is one Summit Bill.
Cheryl, if you want to mention that or not, but that came from Senator Galvin's office. What that is, it's something to be proposed across the state, but specifically he was going to do one for our county. Understanding what we're looking at with the EMS situation. So basically what that's going to allow is some flexibility to existing state regulations where a village or a town or a county can go out and set their own district without some of the current hurdles that you would have to go through. So I told Cheryl I'd support that, and we're not really sure what the future for EMS will be here in the county, but that is something that potentially be leveraged to assist us in town.
I didn't check this morning either, Brian, so I don't know if there's the same as yet, but I didn't have numbers on the Senate side, but
Yeah, and this has gone forward for a number of years. Things get installed up by lobbyists and all, so potential maybe it's just focus on Wyoming County, maybe able to pass versus the statewide one.
there's two of them out there right now. One, I think the statewide, and the other one focuses on the Adirondack part, so. And now a third one that focuses on.
Resolution for this. Okay. Supervisor Burke moves the motion, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, carried.
I had information passed along to me a few years ago, I think, in the state of Mississippi, when the Board of Supervisors set up the districts, And I always thought, why not take a county map and a compass and make a circle where they overlap, because you've got some places where ambulances are traveling miles to here where there's no only one, a half a mile away.
Right.
Yeah, that always happened throughout the states and different places where they have some maintenance districts that it can be done. There's obviously quite a few steps, so this legislation just kind of will make that process a little bit easier.
No, it doesn't make any sense, the village of Perrysburg in the town of Castile, village of Castile is right in the town of Pike, and they got all that space in between, but that's where the emergency services are based in the village.
There's always been a Silver Lakes in our area, it's always.
Well, look at your town, part of it's covered by Warsaw, part of it by Perrysburg.
I remember all of that, yeah,
And
I know.
Someone else's town is worse than that.
You live here, you're worse off, you live there.
Multiple companies in this town.
And
don't you have five?
Five. And another thing that you take into making up such a district is the drain. Right now, we have a place called Poplar Point that Marysburg covers, so Marysburg has to pull over Parker Hill, go down Madison Road, to then go down the hill, halfway down the very steep hill, Poplar Point, where Sheldon, it's almost flat down through the one valley, and then you're there. And, you would take terrain and the ability to drive it at speeds into consideration to make up the district.
Okay. Guess we'll move on to number 2.
Number 2 is just our annual conference. Last month had permission for that. Shortly after that, membership felt to pull us away for 3 days. I think we have everything going on right now. This wasn't, the best thing to do, so we decided to cancel that, maybe do something later this year, so we'll just cancel that for crew travel.
Everybody good with that?
No.
Number 3, overnight travel authorization.
So the next one is tentative to happen. That's the annual ASPEC conference that hasn't happened in a couple of years. Part of that is covered by our fire employee. Next month, I'll have a listing in the county as a team, we're planning on that as well.
So you want to make the motion on this one? Mr. Granger makes the motion. All in favor? Opposed, carried. Okay, number 4, appropriation.
That's the agreement with the health department for Sylvia's time when she's working out at the COVID testing clinic. Just to cover some of the overtime limitations down there. So that should probably come about $15 in those for this year. If it does, obviously, things continue for reimbursement.
Okay. Motion.
Sure.
Mr. Make the motion.
I know what it's like to sit there. Anybody?
Anybody?
There's a lot of us here.
Number 5, 2022 appropriation.
This is for the fire training center. That was part of the ARPA funds for the burn tower ceiling and walls. So we originally had that quote back in June. Circled around with them again to find out how long it would take to get the materials. They said about 2 to 3 months. So we wanted to have that material here by March, April, so that we get might give us time to get that done before we start the live fire in there. With that, of course, the price of everything has gone up. So the original quote came in at $8,989. The updated quote came in at $11,397. On the building, there's on the back door, there's a power jam on the simulated forcible entry. That's just from being beat on over 10 plus years. That's starting to fail. So we've been working with Mike on that. If we included that with the same vendor, it would be about $12,627. We are looking at people from a couple of others here in the county to do some metal work to see what they would charge us. So just to decide which one would be cheaper for us to go with. So, and working with Janice, just want to make that appropriation over, and make the feeling on covering those additional expenses for the business material.
Any questions?
So he's asking, I think what you're asking is, there's 9,000 that was approved at the October 12th meeting to use ARPA funds. But I think what he's saying is things came in cost more. And is that okay to increase that from 9 to, that's what you're asking? Because I told him you could put on the 9 because I know they've already approved that. It's the additional pieces that.
So you want resolutions to raise it?
Yeah, to raise that up, I would say right now, that 12,627 just to cover that, and hopefully if we can find that here locally, one of those places can do that for cheaper, we would go with that or go with fire facilities who supply the material for the whole building.
So 12,627. 7,000.
12,627. Okay. Motion.
Somebody.
Here, I'll do that. Let's spend some money. Brian will be happy. Brian will be happy.
Aye, opposed, carried.
If we just quickly, if we could stay at the training center just for a second, yesterday I had a call in Congressman Jacobs' office on the update on the grant. They indicated we should hear something about February 18th. Right now, the current amount is $597,189. So it's, I believe our original one we put in was like 756. He felt that our application included all necessary elements. He didn't really have a feeling on how they were going to go, but he said being that it was related to first responder training, sits very high right now in Washington, so he had a good feeling about that. If for some reason we didn't get that, or we didn't get as much, he said the next funding cycle will open in March. He expected that to be pushed back, but he would keep us updated on that and, make sure that they're working with us on that process, so. I know, we submitted that to the other congressman and assemblyman and senator, everything, and all those have been rejected so far, but this is the most promising one. Hopefully, in a couple of weeks, we'll get updated on where we're at with that.
So what was the date? It was February?
He started around February 18th.
18th.
They should expect to hear something.
And then do the dollar amount again?
$597,289.
Was that?
Jacob's office. With that, with the sale of our vehicles, we brought about $17,000 from that. So, and working with Mike, what we want to do, is there anything we can do out there? Maybe something that we start framing out, mechanical room or bathrooms or doors, or putting it towards engineering or something like that. If there's some work that we could start to do, or getting tables and chairs, things like that we might need once we get a better direction. So I think when that money comes in, I'd like to get a line somewhere that we could use towards a training center. And then once we get a feeling, or hear from, about this grant, if we're going to get that, the combination of that money we have, I know Mike has that included in his capital plan next year. I think would set us up in a good position throughout this year to start working, designing out HVAC, designing out facility, things like that. So hopefully do something next year if this grant funding comes through. So we should see that money in the next couple of weeks. I believe it's 30 days for that to be deposited. So when that comes in, we'll get that place wherever that needs to go. So we'll put it towards something when we get a better idea of the existing grant.
But for now, we keep our fingers crossed. Yes. Yes.
Right, and just to reiterate on my plan with the training center is usually capital funding next year to begin the process of renovating the building as it exists, not giving them the plan that $600,000 plan that was initially intended, 3 years ago now. But we still have to tighten up the building that's there, rebuild what's there at least. That's what I'm looking to do, which wouldn't be $600,000 worth of work. It was definitely $250,000 worth of work, maybe with the addition of classrooms, stuff like that. But we're praying for a grant. As it sits right now, it'd be nice to, it would be nice to appropriate funds or reallocate the vehicle funds into maybe purchasing overhead doors for the building, because it's money we can spend now. We can put the doors somewhere else or whatever and store those until we're using them. Or bathroom equipment. We know we want to add 2 new bathrooms to the building. So it's a catch-22 right now, but we know down the pipeline, we at least need to renovate that building that's there. So he's just trying to be proactive with that $17,000 if you guys see fit.
The other option we could do with that, but the reason I didn't want to do that was put it towards my vehicle, which is supposed to be made here in March. The reason I don't want to do that is because we have the grant money there. We know we can cover that with the grant money. And with how tight that language is with the grant, I think it's very hard to spend that now on other people out there. So we could pull some of that money to help with a little bit of equipment out there. But none of that money can go towards construction. Same with any grants, 911 guys, they could help support a little bit of that. More so on like the IT related stuff. We're just saying that it's for the backup dispatch center, but typically those grants have nothing to do with construction, renovation, like that. So that's why I really don't want to use that money towards the vehicle. Towards the training center.
Questions on that? Think Brian got FYIs here.
The first one is just to continue the existing agreement with the hospital for EMTs and class to do the clinical time. The next 4 was the various agencies. The state has opened up their flexibility a little bit for clinical time, so Members in the Emt Class can now ride with their host agency. Instead of setting up scheduled times where someone in their agency would have to sign off on. So it makes it a little bit easier. So we wanted to kind of fast track these 4 because right now they are in class here in Warsaw. The wraps up in about a month, so that they can do their clinical time on, so they'd be eligible to sit. So eventually after that, we'll do arrangements with all the departments in the county. That's the only caveat in New York State is you have to have affiliation agreement between the course sponsor, which is my office, and those agencies to do that.
Any questions? Move on to number 7, operational updates.
Just a couple things, I'll skip over the first one right now. The emergency response team, what that is right now is our county hazmat team, works under that structure. In the county, we also have a rope rescue team, which made up about 7 or 8 departments, members from those departments, as well as ice water rescue team over on the side of the county, with some capabilities on the west side too. So what we're looking to do is similar to Genesee County, and a lot of other counties how they do that, is bring them all to the emergency response team structure. We've talked with the membership of the leadership of both of those, brought up a chiefs meeting, everyone's in favor of that. The big advantage what that brings us is the ability to apply to force and grant funding through the state, through the central rescue grants, so they can help develop bringing training and things like that. So the reason I bring that to you guys is the one caveat in that is according to General Municipal Law 209B, the board can develop an emergency response team, but you would have to have a public hearing and pass a resolution on it. So try to dig into that if there was ever actually a resolution done on the current hazmat team. We can't find anything, and talking with some older members of the fire service, there's never anything they could think of. So I'm going to draft up a resolution that we would just spell out exactly how that would look and allow flexibility down the road with additional specialties we brought onto that team. So
Brian, you know where that was formulated, what year
is that
the hazmat team was created?
not exactly. Bill reached out to a couple previous directors and different ones. And they never actually officially done, but the team's been around since the late 90s.
Got journals dating back to the 1800s, so, we knew, we could probably look it up.
Yeah, we just don't have a good, definitely, in the reader days, but before the reader days, there was some sort of thing there, but just no one knows if there's ever anything officially, passed by the board.
So 1990s, we could do some snooping.
On the EMS update, a couple things, so just quickly on 2021, just over 3,800 calls, which was about 500 more than last year. Average drop call percent, 12.85%. So I'll have some additional details in our annual report next month. A couple weeks ago, New York State published their state survey, which was conducted over about 2 years. Really nothing struck out in there that we didn't already know. It highlighted a lot of existing things that have been talked about throughout the country, here in Wyoming County, different meetings. So I'll include a link to that and take a while. We're still working on gathering some more information on the various models, specifically information on Livingston County and on how they do things, fees, things like that. On the Monroe side, I met with Barry on Tuesday. He's brought on some additional staff so they're going to be able to expand out their operations a little bit more. So in addition to having 24-hour ambulance out of the hospital, Medic 82, which is an ambulance out of the Sheldon Fire Hall, will be up and running. Ideally, when all staffing is there, from 8 o'clock in the morning to midnight, that will transition over to a fly car. And when staffing allows, he'll have a fly car out during the day. And we're going to move that fly car to Arcade and trial that to see how that works out. And the last thing, that national provider ID. So in the course of the whole certificate of need issue in Monroe, one of the big things that we need in order to make the billing work out is we need that national provider ID number. So just an FYI on that for permission to apply for that. There's no fee for that, but that will allow us to, in the Medicare, Medicaid world, operate an EMS service so we can do that billing legally how New York State requires that. So pretty in-depth application. Talking to Laura, who's been through it a few different times. She said probably to give it 6 months to get, so still get started looking at that process and getting up the information we're gonna need, so we can start to move forward with that. To come in, put the rest of the CON issue with Monroe. Other than that, we had a call with Monroe about a week and a half ago to work through that agreement. Janice was on that call, Laura was on that call, clarifying some of our questions, but there's still some issues related to the process, so we're gonna have a weekly call starting on Monday with them, with their staff and our staff to go through and work out those specifics so we can get that arrangement finalized.
Anything else for Brian?
Brian, I got a question. How did we make out on that questionnaire that you sent out? About who was interested in taking classes, being instructors, or
The training one,
there was a couple other, yeah.
those responses are still coming back. I don't know specifically what he has, but we do have an Emt Class on that application was just submitted this morning actually to the state to run an Emt Class in Silver Springs. So that's going to start sometime end of March, and that will wrap up about mid June. So Silver Springs had a number of EMTs and a couple other departments, so ANLAP will be teaching that class. The class that is being run through New York State, daytime academy class, I don't believe Wyoming County has anyone in that class that's being run in Buffalo, but we're hoping to find that out, see if we can answer that. So you have that EMT class coming. And then all of our fire courses were announced the other day, so we have a number of the fire officer classes coming up. We have the basic exterior firefighter class, which is really the first class that any firefighter needs. That's going to start in March and run through and the beginning of June, sometime in June. And right now we're really working with 2 fire instructors, so it's very hard to bring additional fire training in. We have a couple other ones on the books that we've been doing a whole lot. So we're relying on 2 instructors. So the fire officer class in that week will come to say they just don't have any more of their schedules to go for training. And the CLI class, which is the lab instructor class for EMT, Perry County is supposed to be having one in February. That hasn't received the final blessing from New York State yet, but that was part of our survey that went out to see if there's any interest from Wyoming County first responders that would want to do that, or CIC, so we could either bring that here or depending where they live, we'll have it go to that county class.
On Monday, I was surprised that Tom Sheldon, and I believe all 16 towns received at-home COVID tests for us to hand out. And I know I spoke with you, and originally I thought this was supposed to go through the libraries, and all of a sudden it was being them at our building. What happened there? What happened to the libraries?
That last distribution did go out. There were some discussions to push those out to the town and villages, and some of them reached out and expressed interest in doing that. So we said we would try that one and see how that one went, pushing those out. So I know everyone should have received them by the end of the day yesterday. And this was helping with that delivery. So I believe everyone does have them. So I know one of the questions that came up was how that was going to be advertised. And there was, a few that expressed concerns just because they don't have regular office hours and tenancies and things like that. So we told them we would leave it up to them to advertise however they wanted to. And that, the county would be pushing it on social media, press releases or anything like that. So.
Are there more to be expected? Again, my highway staff says they're snowplow drivers. And they're not going to, be there. Obviously, they're not there. They're out on the snow. And again, we have a very limited office time. My clerk, the town clerk, I shouldn't say my clerk, town clerk, as always, rose to the top. And what she ended up doing was contacting, we have 2 seniors groups, and gave it to the directors of the seniors groups and handed them out from there, which again was brilliant of her. I guess I think we should have been notified before, hey, guess what, we're dropping them off None of us remember being asked that question. Again, all of a sudden we're coming up with how are we and why is it that we're expected to distribute them? Was our concern. So I don't know if anybody else felt the same way. It just caught me off guard.
And it was something I was gonna bring up Monday, that I was probably had to be there. Logistically, it is a challenge to do it that way. I much prefer the libraries, it was just a lot easier when you're trying to sort out how the test kits come from the state and then trying to box those up and trying to get a fair amount out to the town villages. Coordinating when people are there and that it becomes a real logistical challenge. So, it's something we'll definitely look at. I know the libraries more than happy to do that. So that might be the strategy going forward. As far as getting more, the email I got yesterday said, yes, they're coming, but we hear that every week. So, they typically don't know until the last minute. We found out that in the call last Wednesday with the Commissioner of Homeland Security, she told us that they were coming, and half an hour later we had a phone call saying that they were on the way. So it's very short notice. We did notify of what's coming, and they didn't show up till late Friday afternoon anyways.
I don't know about the pharmacies.
Supposedly the federal government was sending those out directly to the pharmacies. So I know they've also sent out some masks to the different OPW and homes. I talked with Kelly Driver this morning. She hadn't heard anything about that, but supposedly those are before we deployed out yesterday and today from New York State to those agencies as well. So
Are they for sale at pharmacies?
I thought they were supposed to be free once they got them.
yeah, I
I don't
don't
know, obviously in Jeremiah, I find out, and he would know more than probably anybody else, so. And the only thing I was thinking, Brian, is if you put something on the website saying that we have them, but they're only available when the town clerk is there, blah, 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 their hours and. Cause you're right, I mean, the guys aren't there, they're out plowing snow, nobody's at the house, so my clerk only has Tuesdays and Thursdays, and she's here, so. I don't know.
And again, you have that thing of, the clerk doesn't want everybody in the world coming in.
No.
Hey, guess what? I think I have COVID. Can I come and get a test from you?
Yeah, yeah.
I mean, it's just counterproductive. It's like this thing with the Zoom meeting, you gotta notify where a board member is going to be attending the Zoom meeting.
They don't, no.
Anyway.
No, they extended that, right? Right. That's all extended, so you really don't have to. That's,
What I did for now is, make sure that my drivers had two boxes of the kits, because I think that's important. And we have wingmen, I know all towns don't, but because you're in close quarters in the truck, that I thought it was good if someone suspected it. And also for the town clerk and the deputy clerk and our court people too. And then,
Which that's all fine and well, and that's also something that was done there.
Okay.
But there's still 70 of them left over.
but
Yeah.
I got more people. So,
Because I got the four in the mail.
I don't want to, I gotta keep running.
Oh, yeah, there's one line that sends it forward.
then just one last thing that came up the other day, the public defender's office reached out about AD in their building. So those AEDs in the county buildings were a number of years ago through a field grant. Obviously that funding's gone away, so our office has helped maintain those batteries and pads, and this year you guys put a little bit more money towards that because we had about 18 pads that were set to expire. And so along with the county buildings, this building has two, DSS has two, every other county building has one. Both Bill, myself, and a couple of deputies have AEDs in our vehicles from those, and then the sheriff's office purchasing these for the rest of them. So the public defender's office wondered how they could get one. I told them as of right now, there's no grant money out there. They would have to do something come out of the budget somewhere. I checked with Mike to see if he had anything any sort of like safety type lighting, anything like that. He doesn't have anything there, so that unit that's on the wall with that, you know, case in the wall with alarms, things like that, it's around $1,500 for that. Pads are around $50, and then batteries, I want to say they're around 50, we don't quote me on that price, on how much those are, so. But we don't have any money set aside in our budget for that, if that's something that the board, you know, would like to see,
I
then.
think they've got millions of dollars of grant money. I think it's office supplies.
Sounds like
Office supplies. I mean, you know who works there, it's like it is office supplies.
So my fear is on my end, we put one in there, what other buildings are gonna, you know, how many other people are gonna want them in their buildings? Do we have some at the Ag Center?
Two.
There's, okay, so,
Yeah, I believe I've heard of the county building, and through that, and that, but, so I'd like to double check that, but I think like the animal control would be the only one I can remember that doesn't have one.
I can't place one at both A or B and B. That's,
Well, they have,
they do, yeah, I don't change the batteries out, so I don't, you know what I mean? So if that's the only building, I guess it's a little more, it's a little easier to spend $1,500, but I know we don't have safety. That was emergency services deal, that's why.
and my recommendation is buy the same one, so that way it's easier for pad replacement, battery replacement. The one of Mike's staff goes around monthly right now to do an inspection on them, to make sure the batteries are good, and once the smoke needs anything there. Or if they're used, you know, typically the county buildings aren't used, we've been using ours, I've used mine twice, you know, the deputies 3 or 4 times during the last 6 months, so there's been a lot of use, and right now, we're up against like everything else, you can't get pads. So we have that money set aside, and he's, the company we deal with is send us some expired pads to use in the meantime, because they just can't get any pads in, so that would be my only recommendation, is, you know, if they are getting to that, to buy the same one, so that equipment wise, it's the same one.
Then the same ones like they're compatible, what many 80 users, so they can help you out, they can do it.
It depends on the manufacturer.
Without changing
Yeah,
pads.
typically they have changed over the pads. There's a lot of them are compatible.
Brian, I also recommend these buildings that actually, you know, I sent 2 of my guys to that training, AED and CPR training. If we're gonna put these things in buildings or have them, I think at least 1 person or 2 people from each building should be trained to use them.
Well, definitely.
And it only makes sense to do that because it's no good if it, you know.
And one of the questions I have are, do we go with one vendor or do we with several different vendors?
For the pads, and the pads we're buying through one, we reached out to another one to see as well. And we bought 2 of them, but they're like $10 or $15 more. So we did get a couple of them just because we had none left. So if we at least have, you know, 1 or 2 of them, we can back up if needed. And with the expiration date, they told us that they're still good for a year after that. So we could still use them for a year after. So we're not, you know, we're not critical yet. But again, he doesn't know when we're going to be coming in.
It's just when we get into training, that we have several different types of different.
Yeah, a lot of employees, we have old pad that we just use over and over for training purposes.
See, if I had a taser, I don't have to learn how to.
It's the same concept, okay? It's the same concept. It just doesn't read, okay? It just applies.
Good joke.
So did you want to go back to the application for Bianca or did it come in?
Yeah, that was just that, why that's something we need to do for the CO.
Any other?
I got one more thing. So the meeting we had, you had back in December up in North Jago over the EMS. What has been resolved or decided after that meeting? Anything yet, or where do we sit with it?
So part of that was what Bill had sent out last week on trying to gauge that interest for the Emt classes, because we got to get those numbers in. So, you know, we do have that class come up with Silver Springs, working with the instructors on their availability for, you know, further ones throughout the year right now, or things like that. And obviously we got to get the interest back there. So I don't know exactly how many's yet come in, but there have been some coming in. We expect them to come in over the next couple of weeks. So we do have an EMT class going on. A lot of interest, obviously on fire classes and things like that, which again, we're limited with our instructor availability. As far as the models, in talking with Monroe and specifically with Barry, his feelings on operations in the county, he expressed some different concerns and things like that. And, we're just pulling a lot of information from Livingston County. We had some conversations with Mercy in terms of how they operate, pay structure, different things like that. Trying to gather some of that other information. So we've got a couple vital pieces of information like pair mixes that we need. It can really help us start to formulate plans and start to look at that. So continuing to pull all that together. I think I've got it kind of down to about 4 different models that we'll start to put together, basically a proposal for you guys to look at and, try to pick that this is the direction that we feel we should go, and then further expand on that one. So,
Well, before we get that far, I mean, my concern, and I've been getting feedback from different people in different departments, that the big concern over in the past of running EMT courses and having a certain amount of EMT or students, so that we didn't lose money on the course. It's my understanding we haven't put a fund for the EMT courses over the past years, and when we did make money on courses, that money should be put back in the EMT classes. And if it's a question of only having 4 or 5 students for the class, you don't lose money on that, but I think we money well spent to keep what volunteers we got going and keep what we have going, because nothing we're gonna do with the program is gonna be cheap. And the longer we can nurse the volunteers on in this county, I know it's getting less and less every year, and we're gonna eventually be there, but if we've got a substantial fund from the EMT courses in the past, let's look at who. If we're gonna lose money, we'll lose money, but it's a lot less money than what's gonna cost us in the long run to have.
I wouldn't call it substantial.
well,
Would you call it substantial?
so that money is what supports the classes, and that money can only be used for that. So that's a separate line. Through the state where we can only use it for training. It helps us support, some different equipment, things like that, and way back in the EMT class. So Sylvia ran through the numbers and looking back over the last, 4 or 5 years, in the classes we run. Each year, at the end of the year, we at least break even or make money. So this class might lose $500, but this class makes, $1,000. So it balances out. And how, with all that reimbursement, we ran through what's the minimum number of students we need. And 5 students in a class, we should be okay. Now, the big wild card is, the fact that how the state has changed their testing requirement. We have a number of students not sitting. So mathematically, when you look back over these courses, out of those 5 students, it's going to tell me 1 student passes, 1 student fails, 1 student withdraws, 1 doesn't test, and the other one, they're going to fall in one of those categories. So, I agree with you when I told Bill that, I said, these responses come back. And one of those questions was daytime training. It's been kicked around for years, daytime training. We just haven't had interest there to do it. I have no problem running a daytime class. Our obstacle is going to be availability of our CICs to do that. That's going to be the first thing. And if one of the 3 of the county ones doesn't want to do that, that means going outside the county. We did get some numbers back on what that would cost us. That is going to be more expensive, obviously, than one of ours. But that is certainly an option on the table if that demand is there. One of the things that often happens is Bill surveys the departments and they say, yes, we're interested in all this stuff, and then we actually put out the application to do it, and they just don't come back in. So that was part of that to figure out, if you want an EMT class, where are they coming from? We have one coming in March. We'll do a daytime one. But again, we have to find a CIC, and then we have to have students sign on. So I fully support doing any size class or whatever that is. If we take a loss on it, we take a loss on it. It is. to be able to, come up with more EMTs, but at the end of the day, we need to sign up to.
Your survey responses, do you know if you've gotten interest in people becoming the trainers?
I don't know specifically out of this one, just in different ones that have reached out. We have one that's working towards the CIC. We have another one that's expressed interest due to her job right now. It's just not possible. I could see that maybe in about 2 years. And she's one that will definitely do it. There's another one that has expressed interest in doing it. I feel it would be a great candidate. It's an existing EMT that's a teacher. What better person to do it? But she doesn't even have her CLI, so it's at least a 2-year process. That's if you're aggressive and stay on it. The last candidate that was working towards a CIC, he hasn't really done anything with it in a couple of years, so I'm sure at this point it's no longer an interest of it. So we're aging out with some of our other CICs. We have one that, the one that's going to be running the class here in March is doing our advanced class right now, so that wraps up like February 16th or something like that. And here a month later, she's going to turn around and do 2 nights a week back for another, 3-4 months again. So the other two, they're kind of getting to the point where they might not want to run EMT classes anymore. So it is a vital need for us to bring in CICs because, like I said, if we have to go outside the county, we want to process more.
So, Jay, what is it on that?
What would you think is substantial?
6 figures?
No. No, what is that one, sorry.
It's not that much.
Oh, God,
12,000.
what is it, last
I
time,
don't know what it is on.
I'd say it's in the mid-20s.
Okay.
And that's before we close, I think this year we might lose.
When I took my CLI class a few years ago, the people that came out and instructed it were from UB. They were from Erie County EMS, but they were affiliated with UB and University of Buffalo, and they came out, and it was not an easy course. Believe me, I'm not a rocket scientist, but I'll tell you what, it was probably one of the toughest courses I ever took. Because the information that they provided you and then handed you a book and said, here, go home and read it and take a test, because now you'll be tested on this book that you're going to self-learn, not what we taught you here. Then you have to go take your state exam, and he tells you that 60% of the people are going to fail this.
And on top of that.
Or more than 60% of the people are going to fail this.
They have to maintain that, which means they have to take the state test, and I believe it's an 85 that they have to score in order to stay that. And same thing on the state fire instructor side, we just hired another state fire instructor. When that went out, we had 8 applicants. A few of those didn't meet all the requirements, so when it came time to interview out of that 8, we had 3 that were interviewed. One was lacking one thing, and the state basically gave him we're going to conditionally hire you with the expectation that you go to the next, instructor conference, you get what you need. And then one of them didn't meet the other requirements, wasn't selected, we hired one out of that. So that same boat on the fire side, we're hurting. We have 5 or 6 instructors, a couple of them haven't done a class in a few years, and we have 2 that are primarily doing it. So again, these next couple of months, the 4 officer classes and the D4 classes we're running, they're maxed out with their full-time job and their responsibilities. So they're not going to be able to teach anymore.
Again, at one point, there's the basics of it. You had people showing up, getting them into ambulance and getting them to the hospital as quickly as possible. And that's when you had people signing up. At this point, in my view, they're making it that you're almost a medical professional that is so intense that they think that they're making it better, and they're not, because now nobody's showing up to even do the help out.
And that's one of the big things that's highlighted is the training requirements and how often, you do training and things like that.
Taking an average citizen and train them.
And it's about 140.
Professional that's been in the business. basically.
You've seen the big change in the early 2000, and I want to say about 2000, right around 2000, when the state implemented the new policy that you had to be an EMT before the ambulance could roll. There had to be an EMT on the, right then as you started seeing the decline, because what's happening now is you're seeing a lot of the people prior to that were EMTs were dwindling right down to nothing. And then when you're losing those people, you're not getting the new people because there's such a demand put on the new people. Back when I started, I've said it before, it was 100 hours. Now it's a little over 200 hours before you're done with your clinical hours and everything else. And the qualifications are a lot heavier put on you. And that's why I believe you don't get the participation into it.
In the state mandated electronic, PCR requirements, we're no doubt going to lose a couple people there. There's some older members that express frustration. So, for the most part, most agencies are using after about a month now. And, I obviously don't have hard numbers, but we've heard from some of the agencies where they have people that say that's a nice job for them because they're not doing the electronic PCR. As much as the state pushed that's an optional program, it's not. It's a mandatory program.
So who in the state sets all these qualifications?
Say DOH through
Health.
mostly, the Department of Health through legislature. They're not an easy one to work with. We have an EMT for 16 years, National Registry through the military. That we've been fighting with the state to let them receive reciprocity to act in New York State. They still don't grant that for whatever. It's just, those are the obstacles you're up against. Everything is a fight. Right now, I'm fighting with them on our advanced life support because this class is going to wrap up in a month. I want to offer CME to medical education with them, just like we do for our basics. The state won't let us do that because we're not the primary course sponsor. That primary course sponsor is Erie County and they won't grant us one. I told them we're not looking to run another class. I'm looking to keep these 7 people plus our existing about 11 that we have for CME, and they won't grant it for us. So right now, we're down to a couple options for what they can do, and it's going to cost them money, unfortunately. Because and I've tried different avenues with the state, going up to the director. Same answer. So if anyone wants to hear what it's like at 4 o'clock today, we have our monthly call, and you can hear the frustration from all the counties, on the DOH calls, because it's the same song answer.
They're not you.
Now, Brian, do you see a big decline in people of our students in the EMT classes too, because now of CME hours? Being able to utilize your CME hours?
As far as students not
To being able to get your certification through your CME hours?
Yeah, there's a lot to take part in that, and it's a great program, obviously. It really helps sustain some people don't have to class that after they're taking the test. There are some that still want to do that, or they'll sit through a couple of them, to get theirs, which is an option that's there. But we do have probably a handful every class. I think right now there's, at least half the class is research. That's in that class of 20.
There's a few in that class now that are.
Yeah, so every class we do have someone that's the other decide to take.
Okay, anything more for Brian? Thank you, Brian. Appreciate it. Thank you. Whichever one wants to go first. I know you only have 3 things on the agenda, if there isn't or whatever.
He's taking one. Get you out here. Whose salary is higher? Get you out here. Get you back.
He just wants to listen to me. He's all right. Okay. Start with your monthly report for December.
Attached?
It's not attached.
Not attached.
Oh, sorry. The spreadsheet or the units report? Spreadsheet. Spreadsheet, okay. Just, I'll give you a quick recap on it. We totaled out for the year, 645 permits. We did a little, we did 30 permits in last December there, which was, right in line where we were last year. So overall, the revenue, which is reflected in your unit statement, we just want to go to that. We'll go to that. So we had, our revenue actually came in at just under 198,000 this year. That was our best year of revenue since the history of the department. If you look back at a couple of prior years there, typically we were at just under 150,000. So the revenue was pretty good for last year. We had a couple of big things attributed to that. We collected some substantial fines on a couple of properties. And we also had some very large scale solar projects that came in. So there's about 40 grand over what we normally do just between those two things right there. Which also brought our levy down from what we normally budget. We're in at 161,000 levy. If you look back at the prior years, usually our levy's around 250, 270. So
It's not right yet.
it's not like that. We're still finalizing our budget, so there's a couple of tweaks we got to make. Okay, any questions on
Any
that?
questions? Okay, move on to number 3.
And then we'll go back to just some guidelines we put together, just how putting together for some monies allocated or how we're going to do this for emergency demolition purposes only. I kind of put a sample sort of resolution together online. I'm sure I won't do this stuff line in our sleep. So, but just trying to depict some of the language within the resolution that really explains exhausting all of our resources prior to tagging in the money. So if we're referencing the local law, the state law, and the state statute, it really lays out the guidelines on what we have to do with procedural processing these prior to us wanting to ask for spending emergency money. So, and I kind of attach in reference to the local law and the state law, what those processes entail for unsafe structures and emergency measures. There's 2 types of issues that would come about for me coming back to the board and asking for these monies to be spent in these emergency situations. So if we're dealing with an unsafe structure, I basically have to do all 8 of those things before I would be able to come back and ask you. And we would still, at the end result, still go back and try to do collections on it at some point also. So it's not just a done deal, we suck it up and that's it. There are occasions where that may happen from time to time, but in the past, I'm on my 23rd year of doing this. We've done very well at recouping any of the money that we have allocated in the past. The most I've ever asked for in any one year in the past is $86,000. That was for demolition and repair work on 3 different properties in the same year it happened to be in. But that's the most statistic I've ever had to ask for. So typically we recoup almost all of that back. So, and then if it was an emergency measure, same thing there. It's just a little, those are under the emergency measures. There again, it's a much faster process. It may be one of those fire scenes in the middle of the night where the building just absolutely has to come down. Normally by the time I get there, our emergency services group is very good and active about, calling equipment on site to secure the site, do any emergency demolition if need be. Typically, they're always good too. Homeowners are contacted. They're typically on the scene 98% of the time. We hash it out with their insurance companies and so forth right then and there, and it gets done. We did 2 houses at Silver Lake this year, or last year now. But, all paid for, both houses got demolished. One house caught fire, caught the next house on fire, we demolished both. That was all decided in a matter of minutes once we're on the scene.
We could have laid it back, put it ball down, you wouldn't have had any expense.
True. Then we get to the 3rd and 4th house on fire, so it just depends where it is.
No loss of life in the room?
No loss of life.
Well, then who cares about the house?
That happens. Now, we did have one in the village of Perry last year that burned down and they passed away 4 days later. So it didn't make it, but there again, no other structure was involved. We did not do emergency demolition on that one that night. It was far enough away from the other structures, but it took me, I don't know, 2.5 months maybe to get that down under the families took care of it after a while, but we had to do some finagling around because nobody was tagging the property, able to sign away on anything, so we gotta get some things put in place first. So hopefully I've got enough guidance set here so that you understand if they're comfortable with what we're trying to develop here. I don't know if there's language, you want me to work with Cheryl to just clean up the language in the resolution, or I don't know what you want us tagged with her.
That's good.
I mean, I guess first of all, we want this in place. It would help me to complete some of these very sticky situations.
Has everybody read it? Does anybody have any problems with it or on the language?
And what we're trying to do really is just take, instead of me coming back and hashing out,
Right.
committee after committee after committee and have a building still standing there, putting other people's properties in jeopardy or public safety, that I can get this taken care of quickly. I would still go after for collections on it, but we can get it done quickly.
I think we should pass this and then take it to the board. So can I get a motion from someone? Mr. Becker. Okay, let's see. Motion, all in favor? Aye. Opposed, carried. Okay.
It's kind of, for me right here today, it's kind of like Robert's Rules of Order. We've all been through these things hundreds of times. When the person gets done saying, any more nominations? Any more nominations? And we know what the next thing is we have to say in order to get done, get through the day. So, sure, I'll make a motion.
Okay, passes.
All right, next on the agenda, it's our.
There's no Jacoby and there's no Cal.
Oh,
So we're short on a board.
Oh, you lost you to go.
you want me to move on? Come back.
How many
What's he
one? Just have Becky stand there.
Yeah, Becky and stand by.
Everybody's out there.
We got Mike, we nominated Mike to sit in for the.
I thought he was locked up over there with her, so I don't know.
She counts, right? Yeah.
Becky can, yeah.
Becky can.
Yeah.
Anyway. Good thing you're still here. Well, so what am I holding on?
This is the John's emergency demolition funds that we made.
The
Did you see it?
For the fund.
I know.
Right here, you wanna look at it, Becky?
Just a part to get here. Yeah. Down, you gotta vote. You have to vote. We have a motion.
I think there's a motion on the floor from Mr. Becker,
Go ahead, scroll it down. Take-
and I need one more person to report. It's all the rules he put in place before we have to get to that point.
We'll go today for this, that's easy.
Okay.
When she votes no today, it comes out as a non-consent item, so it's not giving you advice then. This is chaos.
We, well, I have a motion on the floor, so you're in on the motion? Yeah. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye, opposed, carried.
Now you're back.
Thanks, I think.
I know, we gotta get permission to go out of bid.
We got a couple more, right?
Somebody for.
I know my vote.
Wait a second. Would you appoint Mike to the committee?
Yeah.
Because he's not on the committee, but if you appoint Mike to the committee.
Yep, I
vote.
Okay.
Go ahead, tell me then.
Because I really have my public hearing.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hey, Mike, you're not on the committee.
Okay.
Board, Mike.
Number 4, permission to bid out for new vehicle
vehicle for Green Co's office.
Yep, so we put, that's our time again to go out and bid for another vehicle. We would roll one out and then I would turn the used one over to real property. They have an old 2009 Mars, which is cycled through the sheriff's department in Watson. You can see through the back tailgate, time for that thing to go, so I would turn my old one over to, update them to 2016 over the real property. I have 30,000 in the budget, not knowing that, what's gonna happen. I'm checking on vehicle availability and cost, but this would be just, go out to bid, see what we get.
That would be a better luck than, Mike had, or even the sheriff.
Yeah, I know.
They say 34, 36 weeks.
Yeah, I talked to Convoys, not that we ask for anything on the vehicles, it's basic, whatever comes stock, but, we're checking out, see if they got laying around, I'm
I
not.
said the sheriff ones were 34, so you gotta be able to get something for 30.
Yeah. We put 30 in the budget, I didn't know where we would be at with it. So we'll see, so, just looking for the permission to at least go out and check, see. If we can find.
Someone, Mr. Granger, makes the motion. All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Number 5, request to fill part-time fire safety inspector with full-time.
Yeah, so we've had the feelers out, refill our part-time fire safety inspector, which is Gary Hunt, who resigned last year. I haven't had any real interest in anybody coming on board yet. The position's been open for 5 months. We were doing a shared service agreement with the health department to help us perform the fire safety inspections. I had 3 of those health department personnel help perform these. Plus I had our 1 part-time guy, so that was 4 part-time people helping with the fire safety inspections in the county. I have lost all of the health department's help on this anymore. They're no longer going to be performing this for us at all. We haven't had a fire safety inspector since 2014. It is a mandated part of our job that we do, and we're not going to be able to fulfill all of our obligations of keeping up with the fire safety inspections without some additional help. Even if I find a part-time person, we're still not going to hit the numbers we need to hit. So it wasn't worked into the budget to do a full-time position. It was worked into the budget to do part-time, which was just under 13,000. So whatever the difference would obviously be a budget increase. Typically, a part-time guy will bring in enough revenue to just about pay for the position. So if in theory, if a full-time person's out there doing 3 times the work, the revenue that's generated will help offset. It won't cover it all, but it'll help offset quite a bit. So.
Okay, but you can't vote on this just the way it's being presented.
Right.
There's a couple of things you gotta know.
Yep.
The way it's set up now, you can't put a full-time person in a part-time position. So he needs to ask for permission to revise a part-time position, to expand it to be full-time. And then he's gonna ask for permission to fill.
Create the bill, yeah.
Well, not create and fill, you're gonna amend your current part-time fire safety inspector to make it full-time. And then you're gonna have to do the request to fill. And obviously you'll have some budget things you'll have to take care of too.
Yep.
And so if you want to do it right, I would suggest that you make sure you work with HR, so that the paperwork is correct, that the request is correct, and bring it back next month.
Yep.
My 2 cents.
So we get it right the first time.
Yeah.
Okay,
My understanding is we're all supposed to bring any positions we want to do it.
but you have to have all of that information. You have to work with HR to get it right.
I'm still working with HR to get the paperwork together.
Yep.
I've got to give you,
You're not gonna
correct me
be-
if I'm wrong, but I at least need the permission to
No.
start that paperwork here,
No.
right?
No, if you would have worked with HR, they would have given you the correct agenda blocks here, then they could have voted on it today.
Okay,
But as it is, the paperwork is missing,
right.
and to expand the position, it's this, I don't have the position code. It's all of it, it's
Yeah, I'll
all
have
black.
all that too.
So if you work with them first, they provide the block, you put it on your agenda. And they get to say yes or no to the correct questions.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because we don't want to ask for permission to put it on the agenda, then put it on the agenda. No, let's just put it on the agenda the correct way.
So what was Dan explaining to us at department meeting on Monday?
I don't know.
Because that didn't sound.
Because you have to do, remember way back before we did HR first and he did them all?
Yeah.
And you put it on your agenda the way you wanted it? And you put on permission to expand this job, and you still had to do that.
Well, the last few that we refilled, we just went and made right directly. to
And he
HR,
took care of it.
signed all of it.
Right, so
It's the same
it's
thing.
not gonna change for you. You're gonna still present everything that you need to present to HR so that they can make sure that you're not using
Yeah, I got all that.
nicknames for titles, position codes are included, all of that, right? And then that block will come to me through HR, but it'll go on your agenda, not their agenda.
Okay.
Oh, HR is still supplying the block to you?
Well, yeah, I'm not gonna do all their work for them.
Ah,
Right.
HR is giving us the block.
It's giving me the block.
That's what I'm asking.
Yes,
HR is gonna give you the block.
yes.
Got it.
The problem was that HR was first thing Tuesday morning. And not every director was here to say why they needed this person or what this new structure was. So instead of going to the home communities first, or to then move on to finance at the end, as the little girls.
And if there's any questions, that.
Yep, and I have always liked to come to the home committee first, to let you know what my plan is ahead of time before HR even gets hold of any paperwork from me, because I think you should be tipped off on at least an explanation from the person that knows what he's trying to do.
But if it's presented correctly,
But I'll make sure, yeah, I still have to work out the titles and all that stuff.
it's just as simple, this is what I want to do because of everything that you said. And you don't have to wait another month.
Gotcha.
Any other questions for Don? Comments? Okay, thank you, Don.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Next Don.
You know, my.
Yeah.
Very nice.
How you doing?
Good.
That's my problem.
Item number one is a grant application. It's the Victim Services Grant. This was a 3-year grant. We're going to get 2 1-year additions to it, but they decided not to do that statewide. So the RFP is back out there for the 3-year grant. So looking for, I put the number in, the 339 is basically what we ended up getting in the last 3 years. Being that's the minimum number, hopefully we'll get more. So asking for permission to apply.
I think that the newest member of this committee should.
Mr. Rollins. All in favor? Opposed, carried. Number 2.
2, it looks like I left some old language on it,
Yeah.
and I saw a big old
Highlight, yeah.
So just please cross that out, in parentheses, effective October 1, 2008. That language, we don't really need down there. Number 2 is to amend Schedule G in order for us to pay out the stipends that are listed in the aid and prosecution grant. This is the yearly stipends for quite a long time. So if we should do that, and it'll be paid out, I believe, the second payroll in February. if approved.
So the effective date of the grant though is,
Effective date of the grant would be April 1st, 2021, March 31st, 2022. And they are budgeted in the 2022 county budget.
Okay. Mr. Burke makes the motion. All in favor? Aye. Opposed, carried. Number 3.
3, just an FYI, it's not really bragging, it's just, I guess, give perspective a little bit. So, and I'm gonna share a blender, as the stop and drag coordinator, always kind of likes to see where we fall in relation to everybody else, we hand out the money for the stop and drag money, so. Our policies with DWIs and DWI by drug cases is pretty, I like to, pretty proud of it, because I think it's all encompassing. It's like Ontario County, for example, there's not a whole lot of wiggle room for maybe that first time person who gets a DWI case. We do believe in rehab or counseling, drug counseling, we do believe in that, right, here in Wyoming County. In Ontario County, for example, you'll see that they have the #1 conviction rate in the state every single year, bar none, right? They don't offer interim probation. Interim probation, we like to use interim probation for people who we may think need counseling. We dangle, say you plead guilty to something, go on your probation, go through the counseling process, hopefully, figure out why you shouldn't drink and drive, maybe take care of that issue. And then we give you something beneficial on the back end. In Ontario County, they just don't do that. So the numbers are official to begin with, because we do that. We don't get credit for trying to treat people and get them, so we're not, having a cycle of addiction. In 2020, it's amazing that we had the most number of driving while legally impaired by drugs convictions in the state. Now, I can sit here and I can just put a period on the end of that and just pat myself on the back and basically make it sound like something it really is not, okay? It is an amazing number, and I am very proud of the fact that we do have that. But what the real number indicates is that throughout the pandemic in 2020, the Wyoming County Sheriff's Office, the local law enforcement agencies, my office, continued to work, continued to provide public safety in light of the pandemic. So, because our numbers were not higher than before, and they weren't really a whole lot lower than before, they were just like every other year, right? And I think what happened is a lot of places across the state just stopped working, just stopped pulling people over, just stopped providing public safety. So the numbers are great, but I'm more proud of the fact that we pushed through and we continue to do our jobs, which I think is a lot of people not during the pandemic. We should have. So anyway, we end up ranking 15th in the state, which is the highest ranking we've ever had since it dates back to 1994. So we've gone as low as 52. So it's just most of the time we're in the 15, 25 range. And again, that number is skewed because we don't get credit for trying to treat people who need treatment and who get treatment and then earn that ability to get some sort of lower sentence. So anyway, and then it'll never get counted, but I just thought,
What was the number of DWIs?
wasn't very large. $57. No, but that was the most, AI by drugs. Now, the other thing that tells me is per capita, we have the most number of drug recognition experts, right, in the state. Like I know that, I don't even have to look that up. I know that because we've got like 5 or 6 of them in our county, and there's places that don't have it. In New York City, they don't pull people over for that because they don't allow people to drive, even though everything's packed, right? But they just don't pull people over. Well, it's just small traffic, nobody gets pulled over. They got bigger and better.
Ooh, that's right, though.
But
That's right, though.
well, it's the same policy, it's the same policy in Rochester, you see RPD drive around, they're not they sign on, they have 20 cases that they have to go, they don't have time, they don't have time to go sit somewhere.
Probably half of the word sound grind.
The other trend, that's a positive trend, the negative trend that's happening is we are finding more guns, more drugs, and large sums of money that are being trafficked down through 20A.
Interstate.
Interstate 28. If you can get funding, call it that, go ahead. I can't tell you the great work that the officers are doing to catch these people. And of course, you got 1 or 2 officers that are doing it, and they're catching, one here, one there. That just means there's 10, 15, 20 people that are doing the same thing. So that is a conversation we're all having. I know the sheriff's aware of it. But GPS is not, it may bring people to drive through here, but also brings the negative element too. So, and he just, Sergeant Ray just pulled something over the other day. Yesterday or the day before. Yesterday. And again, I don't even think that was 28. I think that wasn't it 28?
28, well, I left here after the committee, there was 5 deputies and 2 ambulances there.
And again, I worry because we have another officer get hurt from that same incident. And between the jail, people getting hurt in the jail and officers getting hurt, it's becoming quite a problem. I know it's the nature of the beast, but I just worry about their safety. Last thing I just want to bring up is my newest assistant DA, Mr. Koch, who we stole from the Public Defender's Office. His anticipated date is going to be February 14th. We've got it basically down to there's going to be like 3 cases out of all cases that he handled that were conflict cases that we're probably going to need a special prosecutor for. My hope is I would be able to reach out to one of my colleagues, other DAs that kind of border us or maybe a little further, that they'll take the case and it won't be any additional cost. But we've done a pretty good job of getting rid of his cases pretty quickly, I guess. But we desperately can't wait for him to come. That's it, between you and getting out of here, so any other questions?
I have some.
Oh, okay. Someone's got to set the table.
Anybody?
They'll either pay us short. Or we need to
You're fine.
Why do they care to spend money?
Yeah.
Because they're doing it in the state, local laws, it's fine.
Yeah.